The late afternoon sun painted golden streaks across the quiet country road as Sophie Bennett, a sharp-eyed 9-year-old girl, walked home from school. Her worn-out backpack bounced with each step, weighed down by textbooks and a cloth-wrapped set of tools, an unusual gift from her uncle Noah Bennett, a seasoned mechanic. Humming softly to herself, Sophie's gaze snagged on something unfamiliar. A gleaming black Mustang GT parked off the road with its hood up. Next to it, a man in a designer suit paced impatiently, barking into a phone. "I don't care about the meeting," the man snapped. "I'm stranded on rural Route 7 and no mechanic can get here for hours." Sophie approached, her interest piqued. The man looked out of place amid the modest scenery. His sleek suit, slicked back hair, and luxury watch screamed wealth. When he saw her, his frustration gave way to surprise. "Excuse me, mister, car trouble?" she asked with casual confidence. The man, Ethan Carter, one of the most feared real estate moguls in Boston, gave her a tight smile. "Just a minor issue. Shouldn't you be getting home?" Sophie stepped closer and peeked under the hood. "My uncle's a mechanic. He teaches me stuff." Ethan chuckled. "That's adorable, but this is a high-performance vehicle." "Professionals are just people who know what to look for," she replied, setting down her bag and pulling out her tools. She worked fast, diagnosing a coolant leak Ethan hadn't noticed. Her confidence disarmed him. "You're 9?" he asked in disbelief. She nodded, fixing the hose with tape and sealant. "Add some water and wait 10 minutes before starting." When Ethan tried the engine later, it purred to life. "I'm Ethan Carter," he said, extending a hand to Sophie. "Bennett." As they shook hands, Ethan's eyes caught a ruby ring on her finger, tied with thread to keep it from slipping off. His expression shifted. That ring. Something about it was hauntingly familiar. Ethan couldn't take his eyes off the ruby ring as Sophie settled into the passenger seat of his Mustang. Though clearly too large for her finger, it was secured, with worn thread, and carried an eerie familiarity that gnawed at the edges of his memory. "Where did you get that ring?" he asked gently. Sophie glanced down. "It was my mom's. She said it was a symbol of a promise. She passed away last year." "I'm sorry," Ethan replied instinctively, though his thoughts were racing. The ring's ornate gold band, etched with delicate vines, looked exactly like the one he had given a little girl 15 years ago at Hope Haven Orphanage, a girl named Lila. As the Mustang pulled up to a modest apartment building, Sophie slipped the ring off and handed it to him. "Here you can look." Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he examined the ring. There it was, his mother's initials, CC for Charlotte Carter, woven into the design. His breath caught in his throat. "Gave this ring to a girl once," he whispered. Sophie's eyes widened. "My mom, she sometimes said the name Hope Haven in her sleep." Ethan stared at her. Could it be? Could Sophie be Lila? Before he could say more, the apartment door flung open, and Noah Bennett, Sophie's guardian, burst out, his face full of worry. "Sophie, where have you been? You're late." "Mr. Carter's car broke down. I helped him fix it," she said quickly. Noah's eyes narrowed as he assessed Ethan's car, clothes, and overall aura. "That was kind of you," he said slowly, protective instinct flaring. "She's remarkable," Ethan replied, offering a handshake. "Saved me today." Ethan hesitated, then added, "I'd like to talk more sometime. About Sophie's mother. Where she used to work." Noah stiffened. "Why would a man like you care about that?" Ethan pulled a business card from his wallet. "It's a long story, but I think it might matter to all of us." As he drove off, the ruby ring weighed heavily in Sophie's small hand, though she couldn't explain why. Deep down, she knew everything had just changed. Back in his high-rise penthouse overlooking downtown Boston, Ethan Carter stepped out of the shower and stared at his reflection in the mirror. The ruby ring had stirred something deep. Memories, long buried beneath years of hostile boardroom deals and a life curated to perfection. "Ethan, there you are," said Isabel Thornton, his fiancée, appearing in the doorway in a fitted designer dress. "The Langfords called twice about the merger proposal, and the florist needs your final decision." Ethan barely heard her. "Do you remember me ever mentioning Hope Haven Orphanage?" he asked abruptly. Isabel blinked. "That old charity your mother used to support? Why?" Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he walked to his study and opened a locked drawer, retrieving a small wooden box. Inside was a single faded Polaroid, a teenage Ethan, holding hands with a little girl outside the orphanage. She was smiling, bright-eyed, joyful. "Lila. I promised I'd come back for her," he whispered. Across town, Sophie sat at the kitchen table while Noah cooked dinner. The room was humble, cramped, but warm. So different from Ethan's sleek, empty world. "Why do you think that man was so interested in Mom's old job?" Noah asked, trying to sound casual. "He recognized the ring," Sophie said, twisting it thoughtfully. "He said he gave the same one to a girl named Lila." Noah's hand paused mid-motion. "Your mom never said much about Hope Haven," he muttered. "Only that it closed suddenly. That's when she adopted you." Sophie opened her school bag and pulled out Laura Bennett's journal. "After she died, I found her diary. She wrote about papers in the bank and truths that must be revealed." Noah looked up sharply. "Do you think it has something to do with Mr. Carter?" He frowned. "I don't know. But rich people like him don't just show interest in our kind, without a reason." At the same time, Ethan sat in the climate-controlled archives of Carter Global Holdings, sifting through decades of company records. He couldn't delegate this, not when the feeling in his gut was screaming at him to keep digging. Hours later, he found it. A folder labeled Hope Haven Acquisition. Inside, property transfers, zoning changes, a photo of the orphanage before its demolition, and a sealed envelope labeled WC, personal. Breaking the seal felt like betrayal, but he pressed on. Inside, birth certificates, adoption records, and a list of children, each name marked with chilling notations: suitable, transferred, unfit, and finally, Lila Bennett, special handling per WC directive. Ethan dropped the file, the blood drained from his face. His father hadn't just closed the orphanage. He had done something far worse. The next afternoon, Sophie and Noah stepped into the grand marble lobby of First Guardian Bank, clutching a tarnished key and Laura Bennett's old journal. "You sure this is what she meant?" Noah asked, clearly uneasy. Banks had never been kind to him. Sophie nodded firmly. "The diary said, 'Truth locked away at First Guardian, and we have the key. It has to be for a safe deposit box.'" After examining their documents, the manager reluctantly led them into a private vault room. Box number 3107 slid open with a metallic click. Inside, a manila envelope, a small wooden box, and a sealed letter addressed to Sophie, written in Laura's looping script. "To be opened when you find your way back." With trembling fingers, Sophie opened the letter. As she read, her eyes welled with tears. "She knew," Sophie whispered. "Mom knew all along I wasn't really her child." Laura's letter revealed everything. 15 years ago, she had been head nurse at Hope Haven. One night, she overheard a conversation between William Carter, the powerful CEO of Carter Global Holdings, and the orphanage director. A little girl, Lila Carter, was being prepared for special arrangements. Fearing for the child's safety, Laura had taken the girl, disappeared, and started a new life under a new name. She became Laura Bennett, and Lila became Sophie. Noah was speechless. "You're saying William Carter, one of the richest men in Boston, is your father?" "There's more," Sophie murmured. Inside the envelope were forged adoption papers and a birth certificate for Lila Carter, daughter of Charlotte and William Carter. "If Ethan's their son, too," she whispered, her world spinning, "then he's my brother." Noah sat down, pale and stunned. "Your brother, who just found you after all these years." The wooden box held one final relic, a newspaper clipping about Charlotte Carter's orphan charity work. In the margin, Laura had scrawled, "She never stopped looking for you." Meanwhile, Ethan sat in his corner office, his eyes glued to scanned employee records. He found Laura Bennett's resignation letter, submitted the same day Hope Haven, was closed. She cited ethical concerns, but something else caught his attention. Lila Carter disappeared from all records that same day. No adoption, no transfer, no legal trail. As if she had never existed. He opened a drawer and pulled out the Polaroid again, the girl with his ring, holding his hand. "I found her," he whispered, then looked at the ruby ring in his hand. His phone buzzed. "Mr. Carter, your father is here to see you." Ethan stiffened. "Send him in," he said, quietly bracing himself. William Carter swept into Ethan's office like he owned the air inside it. At 65, his presence was still commanding. Silver. Hair perfectly in place, his dark eyes sharp behind rimless glasses. "You've been distracted," he said, settling into a leather chair uninvited. "Isabel mentioned you've been poking around old orphanage records." Ethan kept his face neutral. "Just reviewing historical assets." Hope Haven came up. William's gaze hardened. "Ancient history. Focus on what matters. Your future, our legacy, the merger with the Thorntons, your engagement to Isabel." The word legacy echoed with new meaning now. Ethan thought of Sophie, of Laura's letter, of that small girl with oil on her hands and fire in her eyes. He forced a smile. "Of course, father, just tying up loose ends." William nodded approvingly. "Good. Oh, and stay away from Queens. Nothing good ever comes out of that borough." As he left, Ethan sat frozen, the warning ringing in his ears. His father knew. That night, Ethan didn't go home. Instead, he checked into a modest hotel under an alias and made 3 calls. A private investigator he could trust, his personal lawyer, Sophie's apartment. When Noah picked up, Ethan's voice was low and urgent. "Need to meet with you and Sophie. Not at your place. Somewhere safe. It's about what you found." "How do you know we found anything?" Noah asked, instantly suspicious. "Because I found something too," Ethan said. "And I think we're all in danger." An hour later, they met at a quiet diner in Brooklyn. Sophie clutched a backpack holding Laura's documents, eyes wide with questions. "I think you're my brother," she said immediately, skipping pleasantries. Ethan nodded, stunned by her bluntness. "And I think William Carter, our father, has been hiding you for 15 years. Noah narrowed his eyes. "Laura's letter mentioned something about special arrangements. Any idea what that means?" Ethan looked grim. "I found records in the company archive. Children at Hope Haven weren't just adopted. They were selected." "For what?" Noah asked, his voice tight. "I don't know yet," Ethan admitted. "But the timing. Your adoption, the orphanage closure, it all aligns with Carter Global's public launch. My father needed capital. He needed to eliminate liabilities." Sophie leaned forward. "What does that have to do with me?" Ethan hesitated. "In business, especially legacy corporations, bloodlines matter. My father is obsessed with control. You were leverage, Sophie. Or insurance. Or worse." He didn't finish the thought. Sophie pulled out Laura's letter again. She wrote that she overheard something. That I needed to be prepared for my purpose. Something was scheduled for my 18th birthday. Ethan glanced at his watch. "That's less than 9 years away. We need proof," Noah said. "Something ironclad. To take him down. I'm meeting with my mother tomorrow. Charlotte. She might know more." Sophie's eyes lit up. "My birth mother? Can I come?" Ethan shook his head. "Too risky. My father has her watched constantly, but I'll tell her about you." He paused, then added, "She never stopped looking." Just then, a waitress delivered hot drinks. Outside, a black sedan slowed in front of the diner window. Ethan's expression changed instantly. "We need to go. Now. Out the back." As they slipped into the alley, Noah grabbed Ethan's arm. "What the hell have you gotten us into?" Ethan's eyes were cold. "The truth. And my father will do anything to keep it buried." The next morning, Ethan Carter sat in the quiet side chapel of St. Gabriel's Cathedral, waiting beneath the stained glass light. This was the only place Charlotte Carter, his mother, could meet without William knowing. Her weekly confession offered just enough privacy. When she entered, dressed modestly in dark glasses and a simple hat, she looked nothing like the high society philanthropist Boston knew. She sat beside Ethan, her hands trembling. "Jack," she whispered, using his childhood nickname. "Your message said it was urgent." "I found her," Ethan said quietly. "I found Lila." Charlotte froze. "That's impossible." "William told me she died." "He lied," Ethan said. "Her name is Sophie Bennett now. She's 9. Brilliant. She has your eyes. And she still wears the ruby ring I gave her." Charlotte removed her gloves, revealing an identical ring on her hand. "My grandmother's rings," she said softly. "One for each twin." Ethan blinked. "Twin?" Charlotte nodded slowly. "You didn't know? Lila had a twin sister, Elizabeth. You were only 12. William told me the second baby died at birth. I was medicated and grieving. He arranged the funeral himself, but he always said one child was more than enough." "Why would he separate twins?" Ethan asked, his voice shaking. "Control," Charlotte said bitterly. His grandfather had bizarre ideas about twins, believed they shared a psychic link. William thought he could use that. Ethan leaned forward. "Use how?" Charlotte's voice dropped. "He told me once, if you ever became unreliable, he could mold your sister as a replacement, a perfect fallback. Identical blood, different environment." Ethan's stomach churned. He saw her as a contingency. Charlotte nodded, fighting tears. He kept her hidden. Raised separately, monitored, prepared. Ethan swallowed hard. "There's something else. A girl named Elizabeth, the one you said died. I found a file, a death certificate, but it references a cryopreserved tissue sample." Charlotte gasped. "I think he harvested genetic material from her. For research." At that moment, a custodian passed too close. Charlotte stiffened. "I have to go. William watches everything, but Ethan, he keeps a private vault. In his office. You'll find what you're looking for there." As she stood, Ethan asked one last question. "Will you meet her, Sophie?" Charlotte's composure broke. "More than anything, but not until she's safe." Later that afternoon, William Carter summoned Ethan to the executive floor of Carter Global Holdings. When Ethan entered the opulent office, William was watching security footage of the cathedral. "You lied to your mother," he said coolly, pausing the video of Ethan and Charlotte. "You're upsetting her with fairy tales about dead children." Ethan realized his father had known everything, even about today. The game had changed, and Ethan finally saw his father for what he truly was, not just manipulative, dangerous. Ethan Carter stood in the executive restroom of Carter Global Holdings, pacing. His confrontation with William had made it crystal clear. His father wasn't just hiding the truth. He was willing to destroy anyone who threatened to reveal it. He dialed Noah Bennett. "Richard knows," Ethan said. "He's watching both of us. We're running out of time." "What exactly did he say?" Noah asked. "Enough to know he's always 10 steps ahead. But I also learned something from my mother. Sophie, aka Lila, had a twin, Elizabeth. William told Charlotte the baby died, but there's proof he kept samples, tissue, DNA, for some kind of research." Noah's silence was heavy. Then, "You're telling me there might be another child? Another pawn in his twisted game?" "I don't know," Ethan replied, "but I need access to that vault. Tonight." "Where should I take Sophie?" "Someplace safe. Jersey, your cousins?" "I'll head there now," Noah said, then added grimly, "Reynolds, my buddy Daniel, Sophie's biological uncle, he died investigating Hope Haven 10 years ago. Car crash. Sarah begged me not to dig." Ethan froze. "Daniel Collins. I saw that name in a security memo. My father kept files on people he considered threats. Your family's been on his radar for years. This is bigger than just Sophie, isn't it? I think my father's been manipulating dozens of lives. Over decades. That night, as William Carter attended a charity gala, Ethan slipped into the executive suite. He used his keycard to enter his father's private office. Behind a grand family portrait, he found what he was looking for: a biometric vault. The first two codes, William's birthday and the company's founding date, failed. Then Ethan tried one more: the date he was formally adopted by the Carters. Click the R. Lock disengaged. Inside were rows of neatly labeled folders. Ethan worked fast, snapping photos of every page. Each file was more horrifying than the last. Special adoptions listed dozens of children placed into carefully selected environments. Twin studies contained eerie comparisons between separated siblings. Reynolds' succession plan outlined a roadmap for Sophie's grooming, psychological assessments, private tutors, even medical procedures. And then, file Elizabeth. Inside, a death certificate. One photo of a newborn. On the back, cryopreserved tissue sample, stored at Carter Med Research. Access code 7729-EAR. Ethan's phone buzzed. A message from Noah. Man in black sedan watching the apartment. We're safe. Slipped out the back. Where are you? Ethan began typing a reply when, click. The office light snapped on. Isabel Thornton stood in the doorway in a floor-length evening gown, fresh from the gala. I knew you were hiding something, she said, walking in. What exactly are you doing, Ethan? He slipped the phone into his pocket. You wouldn't understand. Try me, she said, calmly eyeing the open vault. Because your father sent security looking for you 10 minutes ago. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Why would you help me? Her carefully curated facade cracked slightly. Because I've seen what your father does to people who disobey. And I'm tired of being an asset in the Carter portfolio. She glanced at her massive diamond ring. We've both been pawns, Ethan. I just figured it out sooner. From the hallway came the sound of approaching voices. Boots on polished marble. You have seconds, she whispered. Take the service elevator to the basement. I'll tell them you went to the roof. Ethan hesitated. You don't know what he's done. Try me. He leaned in. He manipulated orphanages, lied to my mother, hid my sisters. He's been experimenting on children, twins. She blinked, but didn't recoil. Instead, she kicked off her eye and heels. Then run, and bring him down. Ethan Carter fled through the service corridor of Carter Global Holdings, clutching files and a USB drive. The hall echoed with distant footsteps and radio chatter, security fanning out to search. By the time he reached a nondescript diner in New Jersey, Noah Bennett and Sophie were already waiting, their faces tense with worry. Ethan looked wrecked, his suit wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. He slid a flash drive onto the table. Everything I found in my father's vault, he said. And this. He placed a faded photo of a newborn girl in front of them. Sophie leaned forward. That's my twin? She whispered. Your sister, Ethan confirmed. Elizabeth. My father claims she died, but her records say otherwise. He preserved genetic material, maybe for research, maybe for something darker. Sophie pulled Laura's letter from her backpack. She said you'd come. She said the truth would hurt. Noah turned to Ethan. What exactly was William planning for Sophie? Ethan's jaw clenched. Files mentioned psychological profiling, experimental treatments, and education protocols, timed precisely to her 18th birthday, like she was a project. Sophie, quiet until now, held up her ruby ring. There's something else, she said. I found this last night. She twisted the band until it clicked. A tiny compartment opened, revealing a paper-thin microfilm no larger than a fingernail. Ethan and Noah stared. Where'd she get that? Noah asked. I don't know, Sophie said. But Mom hid it, probably for me to find. They rushed to a 24-hour copy center. Under the pale glow of a microfiche reader, a document loaded onto the screen. A ledger of bribes and secret payments. Names of officials, doctors, and facilitators. Project name, Gemini. Notes, twin separations, behavioral data, controlled environments. Signature on every authorization, William Carter. Then came the most chilling entry. D. Bennett, neutralized. $50,000, Noah reeled back. Daniel, Laura's brother. He didn't die in a crash. Your father had him killed. Sophie whispered. There's another name here. Repeats a lot. Isabel Thornton. Who is she? Ethan swallowed. My fiancé. He checked his phone. Isabel had sent a new message. I found something in his email. Your accident wasn't an accident. William orchestrated your car breakdown near the school route Sophie takes. He's been watching her for years. Be careful. Noah's eyes narrowed. You think she's on our side now? Ethan nodded slowly. I think she was a pawn, like the rest of us. But now she has access and motivation. As dawn approached, the three of them sat in silence, processing everything. Then Ethan spoke. We have what we need to expose him, but we'll have to do it in public, where he can't hide or silence us. Noah raised an eyebrow. Got a plan? Ethan pulled out a newspaper and tapped the front page. Carter Global. To host charity gala and Sunshine Plaza groundbreaking, Saturday, 7:00 p.m. The media will be there, politicians, investors, everyone he's lied to. It's the perfect stage. Sophie looked up. You want to bring him down? In front of the whole world? Ethan nodded. No more secrets. No more hiding. It's time to end this. The modest living room of a rented Catskills cabin buzzed, with tension as Ethan, Noah, and Sophie spread out papers, flash drives, and hand-sketched blueprints of the Sunshine Plaza Gala venue. For 3 days, Ethan explained, we've been building the case, now we strike. He pointed at a newspaper clipping showing the upcoming Sunshine Plaza groundbreaking gala, hosted by William Carter and attended by media, city officials, and business elites. This is our moment, Ethan said. We expose everything, project. Gemini, the orphanage closures, the adoptions, the genetic research. In public, on his stage. Sophie looked up from the notebook where she had carefully organized every document they'd gathered. You want to ruin him in front of everyone? No, Ethan replied. I want to end him, legally. The plan. Isabel Thornton, who had fully turned against William, would ensure Ethan was placed on the official speaker list for the gala. The public believed it was to announce his role as heir and future CEO. In reality, it was an ambush. Noah would go in disguised as event staff, carrying equipment needed to project the evidence onto the venue's big screens. Dr. Margaret Winters, the former director of Hope Haven, had agreed to testify in person. Her conscience had weighed on her for years. She was their wildcard witness. Sophie and Charlotte, her birth mother, would be hidden in a nearby hotel room, ready to enter the venue if and only if the plan worked. What about Elizabeth? Sophie asked quietly, staring at the photograph of her twin. Ethan hesitated. I found the medical facility where her genetic material is stored. Once your father is exposed, we'll have legal grounds to investigate fully. If she's alive, we'll find her. As dusk fell the night before the gala, burner phones were distributed, evidence was uploaded to secure cloud servers, and backup plans were written down by hand. No digital trails. If anything happens. To me, Ethan said to Noah, take Sophie to Charlotte. She's staying at the Paramount Hotel, under her maiden name, Charlotte Walsh. Noah nodded solemnly. And if anything happens to either of us, he said, burn Carter Global to the ground. Sophie had been quiet all evening, but now she looked between them. Whatever happens, she said with more maturity than her age, we stay together, after it's all over. The two men exchanged a glance, knowing that after might not come. They didn't notice the black sedan parked at the end of the driveway, camera lens aimed at their window, silently watching. The ballroom of the Parkview Grand Hotel glittered with excess. Gold-trimmed pillars, cascading chandeliers, and tables adorned with white roses and embossed menus. A massive banner stretched across the stage. Sunshine Plaza, brightening Boston's future. Hosted by William Carter and Carter Global Holdings behind the scenes, a different kind of preparation was underway. In the men's room, Ethan Carter adjusted, his bow tie in the mirror. Isabel Thornton stood beside him, retouching her makeup with precision. "Security's tighter than we expected," she whispered. "Your father's doubled the guards since I leaked the email." "Matthew in position?" Ethan asked. Isabel nodded. "At the AV booth, disguised as catering staff. Dr. Winters arrived 10 minutes ago, table 7. And Sophie? Upstairs with Charlotte," Isabel confirmed. "But she wants to come down, badly." Ethan's phone buzzed. A message from Noah. "Something's off. Security asking for secondary ID, switching to Plan B." Before Ethan could respond, the door swung open. 2 security guards entered. "Mr. Carter," one said firmly, "your father requests your presence, backstage." Behind the stage, William Carter stood alone, reviewing note cards in his tuxedo. When he saw Ethan, he dismissed his staff with a wave. "I thought we'd share a private toast," he said, holding out a glass of expensive scotch. "To new beginnings." Ethan didn't touch it. "What is this really about?" he asked. William smiled, circling him. "You know, when I adopted you, people called me sentimental, said I should have had my own child. But I saw potential in you. Moldable, obedient. A successor," Ethan said flatly. "No," William corrected. "An extension of me." He set the glass down, voice colder now. "Imagine my disappointment when my son started chasing fairy tales, meeting with washed-up nurses, digging through files better left buried." "I know about Lila," Ethan said evenly. "And Elizabeth." William's eyes narrowed, but his tone remained smooth. "You don't know what you think you know. I know you watched Sophie her whole life. I know you orchestrated my car breakdown near her school. You've been planning something for her 18th birthday. You think exposing this little sob story tonight will ruin me?" William asked, stepping closer. "Do it, but you'll regret it, because you don't know why I chose you, why you were adopted over all the others." Ethan stared at him. "What are you talking about?" William leaned in. "Ask Charlotte. Ask about her sister. And then ask yourself why you look more like her than anyone else." On stage, the MC's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the visionary behind Sunshine Plaza, Mr. William Carter." The crowd applauded. Ethan slipped away from backstage, heart pounding. He scanned the room until he found Isabel near the side entrance. "Richard knows." He threatened Sophie. Isabel pressed a small USB into his hand. "Then we have nothing to lose. These are his emails, genetic reports, bribes, everything." Dr. Winters caught Ethan's eye from her table and nodded. Noah stood ready at the control booth, waiting for the signal. William took the microphone, his smile dazzling. "Tonight we celebrate a legacy, one rooted in innovation, community, and family. I'd now like to invite my son, Ethan Carter, to the stage. He has a very special announcement." As the spotlight swung to him, Ethan walked slowly onto the stage. Every step echoed with the weight of truth. "Thank you, Father," he said, gripping the mic. "But before we talk about Sunshine Plaza, I want to talk about what used to stand here." The ballroom was silent as Ethan Carter stood in the spotlight, holding the microphone like a scalpel poised to cut through decades of lies. 15 years ago, he began, voice steady but tight, a building stood on this land. Not a retail plaza, not a luxury tower, an orphanage, Hope Haven. A ripple of confusion passed through the crowd. William Carter's smile twitched, the only crack in his controlled facade. "It closed suddenly," Ethan continued. "Its children dispersed, records disappeared. I recently discovered why." With a nod to Noah, the ballroom's projection screens flickered, then lit up with documents from William's vault. Adoption records, genetic charts, handwritten directives signed by WC. Hope Haven was not just an orphanage, Ethan said. It was the site of a secret project, Gemini, a program designed to study identical twins separated at birth, one raised in privilege, the other in obscurity. Gasps echoed. Guests shifted uncomfortably. Reporters raised their phones, recording. My sister, Sophie Bennett, was one of those twins. Hidden, watched, groomed. Her entire childhood engineered without her knowledge. William lunged for the microphone, but Ethan sidestepped him. "You lied to your board, Your investors, your family, you falsified death certificates. You orchestrated illegal adoptions. You even ordered the death of anyone who threatened exposure. Security glanced at each other, unsure whom to obey. From the ballroom entrance, two figures stepped forward. Charlotte Carter and Sophie, both. Wearing identical ruby rings, Ethan's voice dropped. Meet Sophie Bennett, born Lila Carter. My sister. A shocked murmur swept the room. Flashbulbs erupted. A voice called out from the back. He told me she died. Everyone turned. Sarah? Bennett, alive and pale but defiant, entered supported by Noah. Your men failed, William, she said, locking eyes with him. I took her. I protected her. Because I heard your plans. Charlotte stepped forward, her voice shaking but strong. He told me our second daughter died at birth. That was a lie. He separated them. For control. Reporters surged forward. Someone shouted, Are you admitting to medical fraud? But William's voice cut through. You fools. Everything I did was for this family, for our legacy. He turned to Ethan. You think you're noble now? You think this changes what you are? Did Charlotte ever tell you why I chose you to adopt? Ethan froze. What are you saying? William's eyes gleamed with perverse triumph. Charlotte wasn't just your adoptive mother. Her sister, Margaret, was your biological mother. You're not just my pawn. You're my blood. You were mine from the beginning. The room fell dead silent. Charlotte whispered, Jack. Ethan's knees nearly gave way. I was never adopted from the system. I was created for it. From the crowd, Dr. Margaret Winters stepped forward, her voice fierce. I confirm everything. Carter Global funded orphanage shutdowns, manipulated adoptions, and, yes, engineered the deaths of inconvenient guardians. Margaret Wilson, Ethan's birth mother, did not die in childbirth. She was murdered, and I have proof. Gasps exploded across the ballroom. At that moment, the ballroom doors burst open. A group of FBI agents marched in, led by a stern-faced woman. William Carter, you are under arrest for conspiracy, falsification of records, medical fraud, obstruction of justice, and murder. Chaos erupted. Reporters shouted. Guests recoiled. Security stood down. As agents handcuffed him, William snarled, You think this ends with me? You think you've won? From behind the FBI line, Isabel Thornton stepped forward in her evening gown, calm and composed. We already have. I've been working with the Bureau for months. Offshore accounts, the bribes, Elizabeth's adoption. Everyone froze again. She's alive, Isabel said, looking straight at Sophie. Elizabeth didn't die at birth. She was adopted by my family. Sophie gasped. You're my sister? She asked. Isabel smiled sadly. I think we both were. Cameras flashed like lightning as William Carter was led out of the ballroom in handcuffs. His once mighty name now synonymous with deceit, manipulation, and genetic experimentation. Reporters swarmed the stage. Is Carter Global finished? Were there more children experimented on? How many officials were bribed? Ethan, still reeling from the revelation of his true parentage, steadied himself behind the podium. There's more to come, he said calmly, and every buried secret will be brought to light. I promise you. As the crowd surged, Noah led Sophie and Charlotte through the side exit, keeping them shielded. Sarah followed, clutching Sophie's hand as though she might vanish again. Back. Inside, Dr. Winters and Isabel Thornton spoke quietly with the FBI. Documents were already being seized. The entire gala, intended to celebrate Carter Global's new future, had become a crime scene. Hours later, news of the scandal dominated every media outlet. Carter Global empire crumbles under genetic experimentation scandal. Secret. Twin studies and orphanage bribes linked to billionaire CEO. FBI arrests William Carter in gala. Sting operation markets plummeted. Carter Global's stock went into freefall. Partners withdrew. Political allies disappeared. Back at their safe house, the group gathered around the dining table of a modest farmhouse in Vermont, lent by one of Noah's cousins. The contrast to the marble halls of Carter Global was jarring, but welcome. Sophie sat between Charlotte and Sarah, still stunned. Isabel said she's Elizabeth, she murmured. She didn't know, Charlotte explained gently. William kept it from everyone. Not even her father, his ally, realized it until the end. She's coming over tomorrow, Ethan added. She wants to talk, as family. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of depositions, interviews, and legal firestorms. But Ethan made it clear, this wasn't the end. He voluntarily surrendered, most of his inheritance funneling it into a victim compensation fund. With court permission, he retained only untainted assets and full legal control of all Carter Global records. More shocking revelations emerged. At least 12 children had been separated from siblings under Project Gemini. 3 deaths, including Daniel Bennett's, were directly connected to silencing investigations. The Reynolds Medical Research Division had planned experimental treatments on selected children, Sophie included, once they reached adolescence. William Carter refused to cooperate. But Isabel's testimony, paired with Dr. Winter's documents and Sarah's survival, had already broken the dam. 1 week after the gala, the family, Sophie, Ethan, Charlotte, Sarah, Noah, and Isabel, sat in the farmhouse living room. Ethan looked at them, then down at the new silver ring on Sophie's finger, a gift to replace the ruby one she'd placed in the memorial. Now that the world knows the truth, he said, what do we do next? Sophie answered first, her voice clear. We build something better. 6 months later, the building once slated to become Sunshine Plaza had transformed. Instead of high-end retail stores, towering LED billboards, and overpriced condos, the land now hosted the rising frame of the Hope Haven Center for Truth and Healing, a nonprofit initiative built on transparency, justice, and care for displaced youth. Its founders? Ethan Carter, now publicly known as Ethan Walsh, using his biological mother's name. Sophie Bennett, formerly Lila Carter, the once hidden sister. Isabel Thornton, whose testimony helped take down the empire her family once embraced. And Dr. Margaret Winters, whose confession sparked the flood of justice. The Foundation's mission was clear. Reunite siblings separated by illegal adoptions. Provide therapy and legal aid to victims of medical experimentation, and publicly archive all documents related to Project Gemini for full public access. Ethan, now removed from corporate life, had become something else entirely. A seeker of truth, a protector of the forgotten. His mornings were no longer spent in glass boardrooms but in the field, meeting with survivors, helping them reclaim their identities. Sophie, meanwhile, had become the face of the Foundation. At just 10, her poise, clarity, and passion stunned reporters. She gave speeches about resilience, wrote letters to other children in group homes, and helped design a small rooftop garden at the new center, just like the one she and her mom dreamed of building. Her quote went viral. They tried to make me a file, a project, a secret. But I'm none of those things. I'm a person. I'm a sister. And I'm here to help other people like me find their voice. Charlotte Carter moved in with Sarah and Sophie, bridging the mother-daughter bonds that had once been forcibly severed. She also began to speak out publicly, condemning her late husband's actions, offering support to other mothers whose children had been lost to the system. Noah Bennett, still fiercely protective, now served as the Foundation's Director of Security and Logistics. Quiet but respected, he kept the mission grounded. One evening, Isabel walked into the office Ethan shared with Sophie at the center. She was holding an envelope. It came this morning, she said, handing it over. Ethan opened it slowly. Inside, a handwritten letter from Elizabeth, his and Sophie's long-lost twin sister, raised across the Atlantic by the Thorntons in Geneva. Dear Ethan and Sophie, I always felt like something was missing. A shadow I couldn't explain. When Isabel told me everything, I cried. Not because I lost a lie, but because I finally found a truth. I want to meet you. Soon. With love, Elizabeth. Sophie clutched the letter to her chest. We're not broken anymore, she whispered.